Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hey, Comics fam, short and sweet here. We have a Patreon, so if you want to help us keep the lights on and spread the good word, you can drop a small tithe in the offering plate at Cryptid Creator Corner Pod over there. Membership starts at $1 per month, and we've got some great extra footage from the podcast dropping soon over there. Link in the show notes, and thank you for your continued support.
Thanks for your donation.
Do you love sci-fi? Are you a horror fan? Maybe you prefer action or fantasy. 2000 AD has it all and should be on your radar. With a whole universe of characters from Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog to Rogue Trooper, Shakara Halo Jones, and many more, every weekly issue you get 5 action-packed thrills from incredible creators such as Garth Ennis, Rob Williams, Alex DeCampi, Dan Abnett, and so many others. Get a print subscription and it'll arrive to your door every week. And your first issue is free, or subscribe digitally. Get free back issues and download DRM-free copies of every issue for just $9 a month. That's 128 pages of incredible comics every month for less than $10. That's like a whole graphic novel's worth. All subscribers get amazing offers like discount vouchers and exclusive product offers. Head to 2000ad.com and click on subscribe now, or download the 2000AD app. And why wait? Start reading today. I'll put links in the show notes for you.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and we have a very special podcast today. I'm joined by a fellow Yeti, Dan Nixon, and you'll know that I've talked about Dan on the podcast before, that Dan is the dungeon master when we play D&D. He's the guy that brings over games every time we have a game night. And we have 2 very special guests because we're going to be talking about not only comics, but board games as well. From Off the Page Games, we have Jay Cormier and Shad Miller. And they are behind some of the games like Harrow County, which you all know is one of my favorite comic books. They've also done MIND MGMT. They've recently crowdfunded Core of Destiny, which is or Core of Discovery, which is based off of Manifest Destiny. And I think they're hopefully going to talk about their newest one that's going to be crowdfunding soon that I am super excited about. They're going to be doing a game of Matt Wagner's Grendel, which is just one of the best comics I think of all time. So I'm so excited to talk about board games. I'm excited to have Dan here and Jay and Shad. Jay, Shad, welcome to the Cryptid Creator Corner. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us. Yeah, absolutely. Super excited.
So yeah, well, first off, let me just say that, Dan and I mentioned this before we started recording, but Dan has brought over, when we've had game nights, Harrow County and, Mind MGMT. I mean, Harrow County, I love as a comic. I've actually, as we record this, Tuesday the 11th, I'm having, Cullen Bunn is coming back on the
Oh,
podcast.
awesome.
Very
Very
good.
cool.
And so,
Mhm.
and Tyler Crook's artwork, just absolutely love Harrow County. And so when Dan said there was a game and he brought it over, and I loved it. Had so much fun playing.
Aw,
I
thanks.
love that you can do the little, like, there's like the built-in dice tower. I think is so cool. I love the mechanics of it. I do think I lost the first time we played, but I won't.
We don't
It
count winners and
happened.
losers the first time you play.
That's
You're
right.
just learning.
And I want to talk all about it, but I also I want to say though that Mind MGMT was a comic that I had only read a little bit of. I hadn't read all of it. Um, Dan brought the game over and was kind of explaining it a little bit, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a kind of a different, like, concept. And we played, my friend Kevin and I, kind of against Dan, and absolutely loved it. I was totally blown away by the play experience. The ability to kind of, like, figure out where the character Dan was playing, like, where they would be going and guess it. I don't think I had played anything quite like that before, and just was totally excited and blown away by the whole experience of MIND MGMT, and it made me want to go back and give the comic another try.
You
So,
should. It's one of my favorite comics of the last 20 years.
um,
Yeah, an awesome story about that comic being made into the
Psychic.
game. Anyway, yeah.
yeah, but so so I kind of I want to talk about all that stuff, but I kind of just want to talk first before we get into the comics in terms of how did both of you kind of get into designing board games?
Oh, I guess I'll start. I've been doing it for a long, long time, more than 20 years, and it was mostly because my friend Sen and I we played games all the time, and then we're both creative. We do a lot of theater together, and we both, being creative people, were like, we could probably make a board game. We're creative people, and then we tried to do it, and we failed miserably at it. Like we were not good at it, and we stopped talking about it. And it wasn't until I actually moved away from. I was living in Ontario, near Toronto, at the time, and I moved all the way to British Columbia, Vancouver, for work purposes. And we're like, we need to stay in touch. And I don't know about you, but guys don't just call each other up every week and like, so how was your week? And so we wanted we wanted something to talk about, and so we said, let's try designing games again. And so because we were far apart, we used, the internet and like and at the time a forum to keep track of all our thoughts. And that just kind of snowballed into eventually within a couple of years, we had like 6 games designed. And we're like, what do we do with this games? Like we didn't know anything. Back then there weren't the resources there are out now on how to go to conventions, how to pitch to publishers, all this kind of stuff. But we slowly did all that and started signing games and for 20 years we're freelance designers. It was great.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'd never, like I said, Dan had kind of introduced me to PAX Unplugged. I had never, because it's in Philly. I had never kind of been exposed to any of that and seeing all the different games, but getting to sit there and play so many things. And then when, I discovered like the playtest room, like it's
Yeah.
fascinating because there's so many people there who either have like sometimes handmade mock-ups of whatever
Oh,
Totally.
the
totally.
game
Mhm.
pieces are and, trying to like pitch it to get people to sit down and do it. But yeah, I have to imagine 20 years ago, none of that, like the crowdfunding in terms of Kickstarter, none of that was really around. Um, what was like the first step? Like when Jay, when you're like, oh, we're going to design these games, like where do you go to figure out what do I do next?
You're talking about when I was a freelance?
Yeah, yeah, when you were doing
Yeah,
freelance.
like, we literally didn't know what to do back then, and so it was we had one friend who was friends with a publisher, and they had published a few games, and they were looking at one of our games, and they were kinda interested, but they didn't find anything. They said, "You should go to a convention." We're like, "Oh, okay." I didn't even know about conventions at all, and, like, they said, "Go to Gamma," back then, and so I went to Gamma, and I went up and literally cold called every single booth. I'm like, which is not something you kind of do anymore. You kind of set things up in advance and you meetings and stuff. But I went up and like, hey, you looking for game submissions?
Love it.
But one thing we did, which was pretty smart, was that I think from my background in working in corporate, especially in sales, in which there's always sell sheets for products like TVs and all this stuff. I said maybe we should have a sell sheet for our games, even though they're not, just to show them. And we did. We made up these sell sheets of like a 1-page review of all these games, and that's the thing that when I first said, "Hey, are you looking for submissions at games?" They kind of were like disappointed because they were hoping I was going to be a customer or a retailer that's going to buy 100 of their games, and I'm some other guy. Like, ah, okay. And so then I should bring out these pages, these sell sheets, and they were like, "Oh, oh, oh, this is like someone who's serious about this. Like, it's not just a monopoly in your garage kind of person." And so they took me really serious. And it was really exciting. And now in the industry, sell sheets are a norm, a standard. Everybody uses sell sheets as to pitch their game. So it's kind of cool.
Right. And so Shad, how about
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
So I know I was reading a bit about your background. And I did want to say, look, you got one of your creative writing degrees at Temple in Philly.
Yes, sir. Yes, and I went there to work with Samuel Delaney. I was a fan of his writing, and then um, after that, I was there and kind of like Dan, all my cohorts, they didn't play as many games as I did, and I started thinking, maybe I want to go make games, and I went out to Vancouver on a big adventure after that, and I met Jay. He was actually mentoring a game design class I had, and I had this weird cube puzzle game where you could like lock the pieces, and he thought it was a cool toy, but he's like, dude, you're going way too insane with the matching. You got to make it a little simpler because they're already doing this difficult spatial reasoning thing. So he and I sat there for, I don't know, 20 minutes in this class, and he goes, yeah, you really got something now. Like, you should go try and pitch. And I was like, well, I can't pitch this without you. Like, I didn't know I was hooking him, but he was super kind about it. And later, after I graduated school, we kept talking while I was in school. Um, Made a really weird game about candy escaping a vending machine while I was there. And then I went on, and afterward I was like, hey, Jay, I want to make this game. You want to do it? And he said, yeah, let's talk. And he invited me to this party for the the Board Game Artisans of Canada. Saying it totally wrong. I apologize. And yeah, and it was just so much fun. And I didn't realize it, but we just sat there and did the same thing we do every time. We just sit down. We've got this game. We problem solve on it. We spend like an hour or two, as much time as we can. Um, and it's just been like a decade of fun with Jay. I mean, I was living in Switzerland, designing the first versions of Harrow County with Jay back then. It was called like Castle Hunting. It was totally different. Harrow County morphed it into this awesome thing that I super love now. But we had, he actually met me in Essen. We to go to the board game convention, and we were pitching skirmishes the way we had our sales sheet. And I'm just, I'm like apprenticing to Jay at this point for sure. And I'm just like, hey, what do you need me to do? It's so fun. Like, for me, being part of digital games and skirmishes was what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. No, sorry to interrupt, but skirmishes ended up becoming a Harrow County.
Yeah.
But we were pitching it as a game called Skirmishes.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Jay.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was when we met Colin and Tyler, I was so excited because with my creative writing background, that was kind of what got me into games. Was I wanted to tell stories with game mechanics and sort of evoke the emotions you can get with game mechanics. And it was awesome to read this comic and see this arc and this power grow, and just start to think about how that would work in this really very different game that we started with. Like, it used to have 3 maps. There's a really funny story Jay usually tells about it. But on this one, it was just great to think, hey, we need this asymmetry. We need, and I'd loved games like I'd loved other games with asymmetry, and we started bringing that in. And we started bringing in. It had always been a problem for us that our factions weren't real nailed down. And once we had Harrow County, it was obvious what the factions were. And and then the fair folk came in, and they're kind of my favorite faction to play. So it's been a blast, man. We've been going to Gen Con with it forever, and it's just always such a high, like showing people a game and playing it with them, and showing people other games with Jay, and we just brainstorm nonstop. I mean, you think you're going to go to a con. What I do when I go to cons now, it's what I always wanted to be doing, because I just go, I meet up with Jay, we brainstorm the entire time, and then we show people the games we're making. And it's like and meet these, like Matt Kent, and meet Cullen and Tyler, and get to talk to them about their work. Like, it's really been a fantastic journey. So, and I did a lot of wacky stuff. Like, I dressed up like Skinless Boy for the Kickstarter, really freaked Jane out, And I did, like, I also dressed up like Kane. He's one of my favorite. Skinless Boy, though. I mean, you can't go wrong with Skinless Boy. But
no. Well, wait, you said there's like a fun story that Jay usually tells, so you can't just say.
I was like, no, Jay. Sorry, Jay. I'll tell it if you want. Yeah. Do you want to tell it, Jay?
The game. So I finished my management, and now it did well, and now I'm looking for game 2 as a publisher. And I had decided, because of my management, I called myself Off the Page Games, and I just said, we only make games based off of indie comic, having no connections in the world of comic books. Just
kind of like when you started games. Awesome, Jay.
Which is another story we talk about May Management later about how that came to be. But then I had this game Skirmishes that Shad and I were working on, and I really liked it, and I thought it was a very Kickstarter friendly type of game. And I'm like, well, but what comic could it be? And we brainstormed, and it ended up calling Chris Schweitzer. Do you know Chris Schweitzer?
Yes.
Yeah, like Grogan Adventures and stuff. Yeah. And
he's worked a lot with like Kyle Starks. The two of them have done some things.
Yeah. And so I contacted him, and I showed him the game, and I'm like, I know you don't have a comic that's in this world, but I just love his art style so much. I was like, do you think you'd be interested in making a comic set in some world, and then I do the game? And he's like, "Oh, dude, I'm like 6 books deep on deadlines. I don't have it." But he's the one that said, "I think this could fit in the Harrow County universe." I'm like, "Oh." I hadn't read it up to that point, so I'm like, I went and read it and devoured it, which is a good verb for that book,
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, me too.
and I loved it, like, just unbelievable. And so, contacted Cullen and Tyler, set up a meeting, showed them this game, and this game, the Skirmishes game, is it always was for the entirety of its thing, and even for a many, 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 many months into the Harrow County, was 3 separate maps, if you can imagine this. 3 separate maps, and on your turn, you had to decide which map to do your actions on, because you can only have activate 1 map per turn, like, "Oh, I gotta do oh, but I really need to do" so it's like spinning plates as you're, like, worried about each map. Which that part didn't really fit Harrow County because it's like, what are the 3 locations? We're like, we're all hand waving, kinda like, "We'll figure it out." But I pitched it, and they saw enough in it and in enough love that we put towards my management game that they agreed to it. So then we start making the game. So now we're putting Harrow County on Harrow County, and just immediately it's gotta be more asymmetric because obviously we have Emmy and her friends, so we called them the protectors. They never called that in the comic, but we called them the protectors of Harrow County. And then the family obviously is the family, and
Right.
they want different things. So we start, so it became more and more asymmetric as we were designing it, and it started getting pretty complicated. And just like in my management, we're like, maybe we have to have a training mode version of the game. Maybe a training mode is like
Mhm.
1 map. And so we're like, let's do that. Let's do that. So we went down to 1 map and we did like a train and it was like, oh, this is fun. And we kept adding more asymmetry, all this stuff. And for many months, we were just working on the training mode. And eventually we're like, we got to get back to the 3 maps. So let's try that now that we've got all this stuff working. And we go back to
Right.
3 maps. And it was a mess. It was just like you couldn't like it was too convoluted and too it just didn't work anymore. And so that's one of those stories where you have to, kill your darlings. Like that
Yeah,
was the
which
key
also fits
differentiator
that comic. Mhm.
in that game was the
Yeah.
3 3 3 maps, and we've eventually had to kill it. We're like, "You know what? The 1 map is the game. That is where it's fun." And so, yeah, we ended up killing it, and then obviously we added Cammy, and then the big question was, should we add Hester or not to the game? And, Hester obviously being the dead witch. She's actually pictured on the bottom of the box as the dead witch, which is cute.
Love
And
showing
then
people
she
that. Yeah.
plays as a 3rd player. It makes it a really hard pitch of a game to sell because it's a 1v1 game, 2-player game. But you can play it 3 players if at least, the 3rd player really knows how to play the game. Oh, and there's an expansion called the Fair Folk, which is a funny story because as we're designing the game, in real life, they come out with a mini series called The Fair Folk, Harrow County Tales from Harrow County,
Yeah.
and The Fair Folk. And we read it, I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing,
It's
man?"
so good.
We read it, and we're like, "Now this has to be a faction in the game."
Yeah.
And just like in the comic, I'm not sure if you played the Fair Folk yet, but just like in the comic, they can't do things on their own. They have to bargain with others to do things for them. And so this it's a perfect game mechanic of like, hey, they put these offers out and you're like, "Ooh, I want those and if you take it, you have to give them information about where the queen is hiding," which is exactly the story and that's what I love about what we're doing at Off Base Games is like if you don't know the comic at all, it's a fun game and you're like, "This is cool. Everything about it's cool." And then as soon as you know the comic and you play it, you're like, "Oh my gosh, everything lines up. Everything makes more sense and helps you, integrate into the theme a lot more."
Yeah, I just thought that, like, because I love the comic, like I said, and I just thought all of those mechanics just definitely made me, fall in love with the game. But Dan, you're the one that you got the game, you brought it over, and I was curious, like, because we talk about comics a lot too. So Dan, like, kind of what was your, experience getting the game and then and playing it?
So I'm pretty sure that I read the comic first as well, based off of one of your interviews with Cullen. And I was like, all right, I like the story that you tell. Maybe you can tell a little later to them very quickly of you meeting him in Baltimore. But I was like, what's the first thing I should read? And Jimmy says Harrow County. So went right on Hoopla, downloaded it, read
Awesome.
it, loved it. And then very shortly after I heard about the game, and then, you know, you guys graciously sent us the game. And I'm like, I already know I'm playing this with Jimmy. So I'm going to be playing with someone who knows the source material and is a gamer. And then I wanted to play with someone who wasn't
Oh,
familiar with the
great.
source material
Very cool.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of a gamer as well. And Jay, just like you said, anyone coming into it doesn't need to know the stories, but the people who know the stories, it enhances it that much well. And that was the story of both these. I play it to Jimmy, and probably within 2 rounds, he's like, "I love this." And I think we
Aw,
actually
that's
have
awesome.
I think
Thanks.
we have a video of our first battle of us doing this where we put in dice
Yeah, I
out,
think I made a TikTok of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the
I
last
think I saw that.
yeah,
That was awesome.
and the
Yeah.
last thing he says right before we cut off, he goes, "I love this."
Love it.
And then
Yeah.
I played it with my girlfriend at the time, not at the time, my girlfriend Chrissy, and we were doing the battle, right, and we're about to put the cubes down the tree, and we forgot to put the box together, so they go all out the back. Did that completely wrong. But her not knowing the source material had no ill, like, she
Oh,
loved the
that's
game
cool.
too. So, like,
Oh, great. That's
it wasn't even a detriment. She's like, "Okay, well, what we got this person. All right, I'm in. I like it."
yeah.
So, and the only way we're going to be able to get to the 3 players, I think, is with when the 3 of us, Jimmy, get to it. We'll get to that final chapter where we can add in
Awesome.
Cammy and
Esther.
get it in there.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, come play with us at a con.
Yeah.
If you want.
We
That would
did
be
stop
great.
by at PAX Unplugged, and
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
Jimmy
definitely.
couldn't make it this year, but they had a huge display, Jimmy, and the board dice tower was one of it. And you had to walk up this step stool, drop the cubes down, and they came out the bottom. It was awesome.
yeah, a functional box, a gigantic functional box of the Harrow County. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Dan sent me a picture of it. That was
Oh,
awesome.
great.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Far in the future and deep in space, humankind has been lost to the star. Quiet rumors circulate of righteous heroes willing to fight and save the enslaved and oppressed masses. Stories of beautiful, habit-clad saviors are giving hope to those crushed under the thumbs of tyrannical rulers and alien parasites. These are the stories of the Order of the NUN-YA.
Interesting. Interesting.
Now, if I can avoid all the NUN-YA knock-knock jokes in my head for a moment, this is a great new Kickstarter project from a few Yeti friends you should check out. With a story inspired by a 1937 Vatican photo, these weapon-wielding heroines strike me somewhere between warrior nun and 80s sci-fi adventures like Flash Gordon. Who doesn't like a nun running around with a collapsible battle axe? Halberd? Hey, it's Future Check, so I don't ask questions, and she's trashing robots in stylistic fashion, riding around like Marty McFly on a... Well, I can't tell you more, but if it piqued your interest to hear about it, head on over to the Order of the NUN-YA on Kickstarter so you don't miss it. I'll put a link in the show notes for you to make it easy.
Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? Question mark? It was then that I discovered ARKENFORGE. If you don't know who ARKENFORGE is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to ARKENFORGE for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even. Welcome back.
When did the box becoming a dice cube and like
Great
how
question.
at
yeah,
what
that's a
point
fun
did that
one.
come into the design?
When we first designed the game, combat was deterministic. And that means like chess. You move on to the piece and you destroy it. And there's no chaos, no randomness, no uncertainty. It just happens.
Okay.
And that was like that for a while. And and it was fine for skirmishes, but for Harrow County, it wasn't giving us that emotional connection and the energy you get from uncertainty. And so it wasn't working. So then, of course, just like every other combat game, we start bringing the dice in. And so then we're doing dice. But since you've played Harrow County, you realize that you're not attacking every turn. You're attacking maybe once every round, maybe, and sometimes not even in a round. And so The problem with dice we had was if you whiff on an attack roll, it sucks. Like it really, and so then we spent a lot of time trying to mitigate that. What can we do to mitigate it to let
Yeah.
players have some agency, some control over the dice rolls? And then it became a point where it's like, are we even rolling dice now, or are we just choosing the side of the like it wasn't feeling emotionally exciting, and it felt swingy and unbalanced. And so and this isn't a game where there's not tons of attack. And so I remember playing Amerigo, which is a Stefan Feld game that has a cube tower in it. And I just remember that was a really cool thing. Shogun uses it for attack, but I had never played Shogun. And so we didn't invent the cube tower, obviously, but I'm like, that might be really cool. And so we try it. And I think I just literally used the cube tower from Amerigo to test
Yeah,
it.
in tabletop, right? Or no, you had one. You
I had
one
one in real
person.
life. So we were
Yeah,
testing
you
in
did.
a
Right.
simulator, a virtual way you can test games, but it doesn't have the physics of the cube tower. So whenever we had combat, I'm like, I'm doing
Yeah,
it here
he
on
would
my
do it on screen. It was pretty fun,
yeah.
actually.
And it was almost immediately awesome. And then
Yeah.
as we're designing it, I'm like, oh, and this cube tower's got to be the tree. And so I'm thinking this cube tower is going to be a thing that stands alone. That's going to be a nice tree design or something that's going to be cool. And then as we're commissioning Tyler Crook to do the art for the cover, we're talking about what should be on it. I'm like, well, the tree should be on it because that's an important part of the story. And then that's when it started. It was like, well, wait, we got a tree there and we got a tree here. Is there a way? And it actually was a bit complicated to try to figure out, wait, because we have to have a hole through 2 layers of box, right? Because the lid goes on, so it has a hole here and another hole, and then a hole. Like it wasn't as just obvious how to do it. So it was a little complicated, and then we figured it out, and I hired somebody to make it for me, and it was all yeah, it worked, and it was like, this is awesome. And I obviously it's a like you could call it a gimmick because it's like a little kind of funny fun hook that it's like, oh, there's a cube tower in the box. Immediately when we show anybody this, everyone's like, oh, that's super cool. And I claim it's not a gimmick because if you know the story, that tree is so
Right.
important to the story. That hole is so important to the story that it's Bible. That of course all the energy that comes from the combat comes through that hole. Like it just to me, it made all the thematic sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
the element that sometimes the dice get, like, they might the cubes, that not all the cubes come out, and then they could
Yep.
come out on a later roll in like, wonderfully infuriating. Just
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
and that one, that mechanic specifically, I always like. I always when we came up with it, I was so excited that it was mimicking that kind of buildup of power in the comic, where it just got more and more and more intense as you got toward the end, and that I think we're never getting that with Die. And I mean, Jay's making a point about intensity, and also I think that it just constantly builds. I mean, I remember one guy at Gen Con, he was wearing a red shirt, Star Trek shirt, actually. And he came in and all he wanted to do was attack. So he just kept throwing cubes in the tower. He wanted to win through attack, which it's hard to do that with only that. And he would just stand in the middle and get killed and like try to do this. But at the end, like he had like 20 cubes come out because almost every attack it wasn't working. And he lost by 1 point. I was like, oh, but it does that kind of like, it adds that climactic and build up to every attack, and you start to lose track of what's in
Yeah.
there. And it is, yeah, it can be infuriating though, for sure.
And it has what we call a negative feedback loop to it. And what I mean by that is that negative feedback loop is kind of like a catch-up mechanic. So that if I attack you and I win, I have to discard some cubes, and maybe some of yours are still stuck in the tower. And so you're now immediately more powerful than me. So you lost the battle, but now you have more cubes than I do because I had to spend some to kill you. So it's just a great. It's not like you're not starting at 0 from every attack. The last attack educates the next attack.
yeah, I really found it a lot of fun to play. So when you're, you know, I find it interesting not realizing that, like, oh, you were kind of working on a game and figured out how to kind of adapt that game to something like, Harrow County for Off the Page. So, um, but now that you've done, a few of these and are moving into another one, are you looking at games that you have and seeing whether or not they'll fit, or have you gotten to the point where you're like, oh wow, I just came across this comic or somebody told me about it, someone came up at a convention and said, oh man, have you guys read, whatever it is, like that would make a great game, and then try and, have you started to do it the other way now?
Yes to all the above. So
Okay.
case in point, the Grendel story. Uh, out of the blue, honest to goodness, I get an email from Matt Wagner, and I'm like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Can you make me a game like Bang Management? Like, can you make a game based off Grendel?" I'm like, "Yes, please." Like, he came to me and asked if we could. I'm like, "This is awesome." Felt so honored. It was one of my goals when making my management, trying to perfect it so much and pay so much respect to the IP that I wanted, comic creators to see it and go, I want that too. And so we're getting a really good name for ourselves for really respecting the IP and really making that shine through. And I'm, it's just going to continue with Grendel as well. But there was another one for Core of Discovery. It was actually a story where a publisher asked Sen and I for a solo game, and it was during the pandemic. Everyone wanted solo games, and he goes, "And I want a game about being stranded on an island." And so on the call, I had this idea of like, it'd be cool. What if the game had like a little scratch off card and you're exploring this island and like there's different terrain as you're exploring? And what if there's rules about where all those terrain exist, kind of like Sudoku or Minesweeper? Or like, that sounds cool. And so I made up a demo, little prototype of it real quick, and I was, yeah, this is fun. This is really cool. And we pitched to him, he loved it. But then he sat on it for a bit and pitched it internally to his company. And then 2 years passes and nothing happened. And I'm now looking for my third game to make after Harrow County. And I call him up. I'm like, are you doing anything with that game? He's like, nah, now the pandemic's over. Nobody wants solo games or whatever. I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, I'll have it back. I'm like, yeah. So then I'm like, okay, I got this game back because I love the game. But now what comic? Now what comic? And so we actually posted, like me and everybody that I know that has comics, we're trying to think of games or comics to fit on. We couldn't think of any. So we actually posted on social media. Can anybody think of a comic that's about, surviving on a planet, on an island, or exploring a planet or an island or something like that? And it was actually somebody from Skybound Comics replied to it and said, Manifest Destiny. And I had not read that. So I went and read it. And I'm like, this is awesome. And so we pitched it to them and they loved it. And we signed contracts and met with Chris and Matthew and just went to the races. And it was just another example of pouring so much of the theme into it that we realized this because the comic is so, for at least for the first half of the comic series, it's so monster of the weeky that we had to do like chapters. And so now there's literally 6 chapters. 2 of them come in the core box and 4 are expansions, each representing the different, the Vameter, if you've ever read the story, the giant insects, the fog, the traitor. I got one whole mode where there's a traitor in it. Because Maldonado, if you know the comic, he causes
Yeah.
It's just awesome. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, listen, if any listeners aren't familiar with the comic that it's based off of, Manifest Destiny, it's essentially like a Lewis and Clark, Sacagawea, and they're discovering, they're moving west and everything's terrible with like all kinds of crazy monsters. The artwork's wonderful. I mean,
Wonderful.
looking at the Kickstarter page when it was like funding, all of the artwork for all of the different pieces look, phenomenal.
Oh,
Yeah, it looks so good.
yeah, it was great. We got to use all of Matthew's art, and then my graphic designer Sebastian Kozner, he was made it just look sparkled, just shine. It was awesome. So yeah, we're so lucky that we got to use like all 3 of my games have amazing artists. Well, 4 now with Matt Wagner. 4 games in a row with amazing artists. Like, how lucky am I?
And Corps of Discovery, you guys had that and were demoing that at PAX Unplugged. What was the reactions you were getting there from that?
Oh, just fantastic. Everyone just loves it. Like, as soon as you like, just even the hook of it, it's got this, like, contraption where you slide a different map in, and then you put these 49 double-layered circle tokens to cover all the holes, and so you don't know what's on the map. You literally don't know, and you literally are exploring and taking tiles off, and you're like, "Ooh," but everything has a rule of where it is. Oh, wood is always adjacent to water. Oh, there's wood, so one of these has to be water in it, so we need water. Let's get some water. And so you're trying to get the resources you need to solve the challenges based on the cards you flipped up, but you're also trying to find monsters and kill them. And it's just so wonderful reaction to that.
Oh, that's pretty neat. So, well, both of you, just in terms of like, you talk about some comics you've read or haven't, and not being like in that space. Like, so what has been like, has doing this made you want to branch out to read more comics, to check things out for
Oh, I've been a
potential
comic fan
games?
forever. I'm a
Oh,
huge
okay.
comic fan. I love comics. It's just
Okay.
Yeah, that like My Mansion was one of my favorite comics of all time. But I mean, I've got a long list of comics I would love to turn into board games. I'm trying to reach out to the creators right now, trying to get them yeah, I got it. Obviously, James Tinian, I'd love to get one of his comics. Obviously, the obvious one is Something's Killing Children, but
Yeah.
even the Department of Truth, I would like to turn that into a game. Like,
I think out of all of his, I mean, I've read a ton of his work, but I kind of like mystery type of maybe mind management isn't really like solving a mystery. It is more like a espionage game. But whenever there's like an element of having to solve something, and like I think Nice House on the Lake, I think that would make that
ooh,
perfect type of
okay, I
Oh,
haven't read that one. Great.
oh
Nice. Oh,
Nice House
great.
on the
That's going on my
not
list.
not to make it a
no,
commercial for
that's good.
games, but yeah, Nice House on the Lake is some guy brings together a bunch of his friends. They're all very distinct personalities. They all have like a particular job. One's an artist, one's a this, one's a that, but he's known all of them for a good part of his life, and he brings them all together to this lake house. And unbeknownst to all of them except for him, it's the end of the world outside of the lake house, and they're all kind of stuck there, and then other weird stuff happens. But yeah, wonderful comic.
Good hook.
He's doing the
I'm
sequel to
ready.
it. He's doing a sequel to it right now that it's coming out. Like A Nice House by the Sea or something. But
Through all
yeah,
of your podcasts, I want any chance you have interviewed him, James?
I haven't yet. He's still on my list, but
I find
we're
that's the hardest thing I'm finding is actually contacting these creators and asking, trying to figure out if I can get the rights to their comics. Like, obviously, there's companies like Skybound; those are easy to contact.
yeah.
But when it's an Image comic or something like that, sometimes it's hard to then because they creator owns that, so it's
Creator owned,
hard
yeah.
to
Well, James has his own like, Tiny Onion, company now,
totally.
and he's, but yeah, I how about Chad? How about you? What's your kind of like
You know,
comic background?
I mean, honestly, Jay really got me more into it, and Harrow County was one of the first ones that I read and devoured. I really enjoyed. I've always been like, I went into creative writing. I was always reading novels and reading fun stuff like that. But when now I'm hunting for them all the time, uh, and I've got 3 kids, so I don't get as much time as I like. But my oldest daughter has started reading them, so I kind of sneak graphic novels in for her so that I can, talk with her about them and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's great, and it's also it's so fun at these, when we're off doing this, we get so many good recommendations, and I've been reading in snippets things, and listening. Honestly, when I was listening to your podcast, every single thing I was like, I gotta read that. Like, there was some specific issue of The Thing I've got to go read now in one of your latest. So I appreciate that a lot. It's a cool world. It's cool to see. You see a lot of that too, because like Jay was saying, when we first started talking to people at Gen Con about Harrow County, some of them didn't know that it was a comic, and we kind of we'd bury the lead a little bit, and then they'd go, wait a minute, and they'd start getting it. We get a lot of people coming back who say, oh, I read all the comics because of this game, and that feels really good. I feel it's like
Some people are like, they come up to us, they're like, "What's your next game?" Because I want to go read that comic.
yes,
Because
a
they have
lot of
such a
people.
good
Yeah.
Yes.
pedigree now. It's awesome. And we actually try to it's a good phrase that Shad used about bearing the lead. We don't like plaster based on the hit comic anywhere. And our thoughts and mentality on that is that personally, I know I've been to conventions and I see a banner or a sign that says based on the hit comic, and if I look down and I don't know that comic, then I'm a little less interested in that game. But so we just say, "Here's a cool game, and let me tell you how cool this game is." And then later on, it's like, "Oh, also, did you know there's a whole lore that you could read about this?" Because imagine, like, you have a favorite board game, and then imagine someone come up to you and is like, "Hey, did you know there's an actual whole comic about this board game?" And you're like, "What? There's a Power Grid comic book or whatever?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So well, what can you tell us? Can you and any other details about um, I guess Grendel in terms of
Sure.
game mechanics or when folks can expect to
Yeah.
see it crowd? I'm assuming you're going to do like the same model with the others,
Yeah.
crowdfund it and go from
Yeah.
there, right? And
Yeah, it's great.
any listeners, if you don't know, like their crowdfunding has been, uh, fairly successful.
Yeah,
I'd
it's been a
say
great
they've
year.
had some, Kickstarter's a great place for board games, and
Yeah.
especially when you have something that hits, it's wonderful to see.
Yeah,
Um,
and we have
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure other creators say this, but we just have such amazing backers. Like we don't have any sour people in the at all. Everyone's so excited and just supportive, and it's just a really great community. And it's a fun Kickstarter. Like we do activities and games and engagement and stuff like that. So it's just great.
Yeah.
But as far as Grendel goes, it's a 2 to 4 player. We are working on a solo mode, but that's not figured out yet. But it's a 2 to 4 player asymmetric game in which each faction is playing a totally different mechanic. So the mob uses a dice allocation mechanic. They roll dice, they assign them to their board, all in an effort to get people out onto this map of New York City. And then Grendel has a bag pull game where you're pulling shits out of the bag, assigning them to different things on their bag and getting they don't have uh grunts and other token. They just have Grendel. So they just have one guy, which is just Grendel. And the police has a little rondel. If you've ever played a game with rondel, we move these police cars around and you're trying to arrest people. And so they have another mechanic you're using. And then Argent, who's the werewolf, the arch nemesis of Grendel, he uses a push your luck mechanic of like deck building and flipping cards over and trying to get his piece around. And all of that's happening. And we have what's called a planning phase where you're playing your game, getting set up. But throughout the game, there are 3 of these buildings, 1 building in each of the zones in New York, like Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. And whenever you get an action that allows you to add aggression, we have these aggression tokens in the game to a building. Everyone has access to their own set of aggression tokens in their color in 3 different, a 1 point, 2 point, and a 3 point aggression. But the 3 point one is small, and the 2 point is twice as heavy as the 3 point, and the 1 point is twice as heavy as the 2 point. And that's because, and I'm going to do a visual for those just listening to the podcast, they're not going to be able to take advantage of this. We have these weird buildings in which you put these aggression tokens into this thing, and inside this building, there's this little seesaw. And so as you add tokens to this, the heavier you add them, the more that this is going to start tilting up, tilting up, tilting up. And eventually, this little counterweight here is going to fall down. And when that fall down, that's a trigger. And when that happens, we're going to reveal and we're going to see how much everyone contributed in their aggression. And we're going to enter a mayhem phase, in which we spend that aggression punching the crap out of each other. It's awesome.
You know what I love, Jay. I love how I mean, sometimes your criticism that like modern board games are like too complicated. They have too much going on. They have like these giant rule books, and like we joke about it. My wife, when Dan comes over, she will sometimes play games, but a lot of times her eyes start to glaze over with the rules. I love how like succinctly you just kind of like went through all like you can tell you've been doing this for a little bit. Like you just went through and you're like, it's it's this, then this happens, and then this, and it's like, yeah, I
Who
got it.
wants to
Let's
play?
go. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. It's
And we're
fun to
working.
watch and workshop like the order we're gonna say things in to like think about, okay, this is gonna make sense. Anyway, that didn't interrupt
We
you, Jay.
just we just wrote the script for the Kickstarter video just this week, so a lot of that's
Yeah.
Oh,
fresh in my
okay.
mind.
That helped.
Yeah, and we're working on an expansion, which is gonna be the press, the journalists, and they're gonna be playing on a board where they're doing a polyomino thing, where they're trying to make a front page of a newspaper with polyominoes. So every faction is playing totally different.
Oh wow. Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Dan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so when can we expect to see Grendel?
We're currently just saying summer, this
Yeah.
year. I don't know if we can get to May, but probably June is probably more likely.
Okay.
Okay, that's
And
awesome.
the tricky thing is gonna be getting the samples ready for content creators because of this, the uniqueness of this, building has to be made to very specific specifications. The weight of each of these tokens has to be so that requires a bunch of testing before we send it out.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That sounds awesome though. Like I love all that. I can't wait to see I can't wait to see the artwork too. Because that's like one of the things I loved about,
Mhm.
both Harrow County and Mind Management. Like, just
Yeah.
that game board for Mind Management is
Mhm.
fantastic. It really is wonderful.
I can tell a really quick funny story about that. So
Yeah,
when
please.
we were making the board, I tell Matt about the functionality that's important in the board, and he comes back with a board that is just not great. And and at the same time, he had a few other art pieces. And so I'm replying to the email, and I'm like, or no, it was a meeting, and I'm saying like, "Oh, I love this thing and I love this," and I'm trying to word why I don't like the board in a very nice way. Because Matt's like, for a little bit of context, I have 2 pieces of his art hanging in my office before we even made the like, I love this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's
Yeah.
like an idol,
Yeah.
like a hero. And so I'm
Sure.
trying to dance around this thing, and he interrupts me and goes, "Jay, I don't like it either." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Okay, great." Woo. And so we talked
I
about
haven't heard that one actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
Sorry,
talked about
Jay.
how to do it, and he's finally goes, "Okay, I got an idea." And he does it, and there is a fair criticism that the board is very beige, but that's for functionality reasons because of how important and necessary it is to be able to spot the 5 parrots or the 5, uh,
Yep.
canine assassination dogs. Um, so that's they pop. As soon as you say one a feature, you can immediately see all 5 of them. So we had to make that kind of a neutral color, and I'm super happy with it.
Yeah,
And I don't know if
think
you've noticed this.
that's great.
Here's a trick or a tip. There is a giant skull hiding in the artwork of the board.
Hmm,
A giant skull.
okay, a little Easter egg.
Yeah,
Oh man, so many Easter eggs.
Yeah,
there
I
is.
can't wait.
I
I
don't know if
can't
you know
wait
this.
to play that one again because
I don't
that
know if you
was
know this, but we actually hid because of the psychic espionage aspect of that game.
uh
Matt and I worked on it. We hid 10 secret codes in the artwork of this game. And if you find them in the rule book, it says go to this website called fluxsafehouse.com, which if you know my management, that's appropriate, and enter the code in. And if you do, it'll give you a new card you can print out and put in a sleeve and add it to your game. 10 new cards that are sitting there waiting for you.
Has anyone cashed that in and got them yet?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
sure, yeah. Absolutely.
People come up at cons and say secret phrases to
There's a
Jay, and
secret phrase if you say to me at a
I'll be
convention,
quiet though.
you'll get a card.
We're finding this now,
yeah,
Jim.
that's like I know what we're doing this weekend.
Yeah, we're doing this.
I hope you didn't throw away your punch board.
If there was art on it, I probably didn't. So, and that kind of reminds me that when we came up to the booth at PAX Unplugged, you guys had the pens with the new car for the combat that you can
Oh,
play
yeah.
back and forth. I thought that was very cool.
We're always trying to do something clever and different. So what Dan's talking about is it's a normal pen, but it's got like a scroll on a elastic thing that pulls out from the pen, and it's an actual promo card built into the pen, and then it rolls back into the pen. And the effect of the pen is awesome. It's like
Yeah.
you can shake the tower, the cube tower once in the game because maybe you didn't get the cubes out that you wanted. So you give it a shake, but then you have to give it to your opponent, the pen, so that they then can use that power if they want in the future.
I love
It's
that.
funny because
So
I
cool.
wasn't, we kind of tested it, but then when we brought it to the con, I was nervous about like, is this going to be fun when people use it? And it's every time I've seen someone use it, it's this hilarious turn that really is like a nice moment of drama, but then it goes to the other person, and it's funny how well it works, even as like
Yeah.
a promo card. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that's neat. So, designing games, like, how often do you like do you get to play like other people's games, like venture out and like try other
Mm.
board games? Like, do you still do it for fun, or now that it's like this is what you do, does it ever take the enjoyment out of just sitting down and having a
I
game night?
I have twin 8-year-olds, and so for the longest time, I had to give up one of my nights, and I had to give up my actual playing board game night because I couldn't give up my playtest night because that's important to the business.
Sure.
And so I playtest other people's games, but yeah, it's rare that I now because they're 8, I'm now playing some games with them. Like we started playing Jaws of the Lion and
Oh,
Ziggurat.
wow.
Yeah,
With
so yeah,
8-year-olds.
sure, yeah. I mean, there's not much to it. Like it's pretty. They like it. So I'm starting to get them more and more into games, and they love it. They love the simpler games for sure. Like Cockroach Poker is a big hit for them, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We play spots a lot. I have 2
That's a
girls,
good one.
and Dan
Yeah.
has 2 girls as well. So
cool.
Catastrophe.
Oh
Catastrophe
yeah, yeah.
is a really fun one that, because my oldest, who's 12, she's like a future cat lady in training. She's would like to adopt all the neighborhood cats in the cul-de-sac. So yeah, a game like Catastrophe would, she really loves. But
Nice.
yeah, I was just curious. Shad, how about you? Do you get to have a game night?
Yeah, every once in a while, I'm definitely like instigating them. Everybody comes to my house, and my wife loves to cook, so she's always like, "Yeah, we can do a game night." And we'll have a couple of my friends over. A lot of my friends who play with me are friends of mine from when I went to University of Texas at Dallas. So they'll like, some of them are kind of starving student types, and so they're always really happy to get this like meal as well as a game. But it doesn't happen. Like I probably used to play. Gosh, when I lived in Vancouver, it was like at least twice a week, and now it's probably like once a month. But also, my oldest daughter, we're starting to make some games, but they're all totally crazy. Like the fairies and the mermaids are gonna have a birthday party, that kind of game. So it's really like imagine it. But I'm trying to like a lot of times I'll sit down and be like, no, let's make a mechanic or use some like gems and toilet paper rolls to make a board or whatever. But and she loves that, even if the end product is nothing she wants to play again, But that's so I'm also, we and Jay actually recommended some games. I bought some Haba games, so I'm listening to you guys and thinking, oh yeah, we got to play that next. So she's 5. So I've got like 3 or 4, got like Rhino Hero and a couple other ones that they really like. And my nieces love to play Clue. So actually all my nieces and nephews are like, we got to play a game. And so that's another source is I can kind of be like, oh, babysit, and I'll play games with them. So the nephews are almost 20-year-old guys, so I can play a bunch of games with them. And then my nieces like D&D. So I get a little bit.
Nice.
But it's
good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Good. Well, I can't wait till the Grendel one comes out. I mean, that just sounds fascinating. But listeners, if you haven't played any of these, one, if you like the comics, you got to check these games out. You got to check out Off the Page Games. But two, if you're the type of person that has not played modern board games in a while or hasn't made time for it, you don't think it's for you, or you aren't you don't think it's the way you want to spend an evening. I'm telling you right now, I have an unmatched. It is another board game tournament every year. We just did our third one, and you find a game that people like and have somebody that can break down the rules. And all of these games are wonderful to play. It's not something that's going to give you a headache reading the rules. Like, you'll get right into the game. And just like Shad said, look, invite a couple of your friends over, throw something in the crock pot, get it like a Mississippi pot roast going with some ranch seasoning. Invite everybody over, play some Harrow County, some mind management. You're going to have a heck of a great night, because just people are going to be happy to get together and learn how to play a fun game and have a pot roast. Like, that's like the recipe for, oh, hey, we haven't seen our friends in like 2 years because we all have kids now. Set a night aside, play a game. You're going to have a great time. And Off the Page Games is like a fantastic place to start.
Thank you.
I'm a huge fan.
Thanks, Dan.
I can't thank Dan enough for introducing me to these games, because I'm super excited to play, especially mind management again. But
Absolutely.
So Jay and Shad, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. But Dan, as our game guy, I'll let you have the last word. I've been talking too much.
I just wanted to say, Off the Page Games, phenomenal. If you're on Discord, jump into their Discord. It's
thanks. Yeah.
awesome to see the updates. He's always asking for people to help play test.
It's true.
Get your foot in the door. Get some
please
say
you can help us play test with Grendel right now. We're still testing some aspects of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'll put links in the show notes to your guys' website and social media stuff, and all, so folks will know where to find you.
Yeah, it's just a great time with your games. Really enjoy it. I enjoyed stopping by the booth, talking with Shad, and as soon as I mentioned,
fun talking to you too, Dan.
If he'd be on, he'd be like, "We'll be on. Jay will be on. We'll be there."
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Pleasure.
Great to meet you guys, and thank you so much. Anyway, I didn't need to jump on what you're saying, Jay.
No. Thank you both for coming on. So, for Comic Book Yeti, I'm Jimmy Gasparo. I've been here with Dan Nixon from Off the Page Games, Jay Cormier, and Shad Miller. Check out their games. Read Harrow County and Manifest Destiny and Mind Management. And get ready for Grendel. It's going to be coming this summer. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we are doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.